What's up, family? Welcome back to the Stop Sinking Show, where we go from struggle to flow. For some reason, the universe has been sending me messages about failure recently. Or if you'd like the left brain version of that sentence, my brain has been activated in noticing messages about failure. My reticular activating system is paying attention to things and messages about failure. From the recent Ed Milet podcast with Jeff Foxworthy talking about what he says to his children about failure, to Brooke Castillo's The Life School podcast talking about 100 fails in life. I've been receiving and noticing these timely messages that connect to something else that got this all started. And it's so fundamentally rooted and intertwined with the idea of fear that I don't know how I can even see it in separation with enough clarity. There is a symbiotic, interwoven existence between failure and success and fear, and why most of us don't achieve much in life, that I cannot help but talk about it altogether. I got started thinking about this in an honest look at my own life after listening to something about innovation the other day. And before I begin the tirade of berating myself or anyone else that relates to this somewhat, I want to let you and myself off the hook before we even get on the hook by saying that we all exercise innovation in different ways. And just because you aren't innovating a new light bulb or coding the next unicorn or breakthrough feature, there is still much room to innovate in every small detail of our existence. From the way we interact to the way we plan to the way we envision life. So don't mistake the rest of what I'm about to say for overlooking the ways in which you innovate. I tend to look at the world and the purpose of life through a vocational lens and believe that our greatest opportunity to make a difference in life comes down to time and leverage. And that is best taken advantage of through the 50 plus hours a week that we may currently just be giving to a job, running on a treadmill to sustain our basic wants. I truly believe that the full time you spend at your work is the greatest window of opportunity that is usually undertaken and underutilized. But it's okay, I get it. Very few people actually are lucky enough to have a vocation. Many of us leave no choice but to contribute in other means through extracurriculars or simply to the people around us who get us the rest of the time. But nonetheless, you've missed out on the greatest block of time in the week. And time was the first aspect. And if you spend that time building something, you can have leverage that surpasses that time. But it's hard to lay bricks on a treadmill. So I look at us and the greatest opportunity we have to make most of our purpose in life through the 50 hours a week that we probably spend doing something that doesn't connect to that, which leaves us no room but just to do that. And if we're still committed to our purpose, to do that with time that's left over, or only contribute to people who get that leftover time. So let's go down this rabbit hole that got this started from the honest look at myself from a career standpoint and its connection to innovation. The reality is that we're now living in a world that puts demands on change to be so rapid that only people thriving are those that innovate. And again, this doesn't necessarily mean you have to work at SpaceX with Elon. Even in your seemingly archaic industry, you are being left behind by those who are finding new ways to do the same thing that better anticipate and serve a customer's needs. There's a demand for innovation on every front, and those that innovate demand and deserve the highest of accolades. But all this innovation doesn't come without a cost. And sometimes the cost of innovation can exceed any projected short-term gains that's to be had. So in a way, innovation is an investment. It's willingness to undertake short-term risk, brunt short-term falls in pursuit of long-term shifts. Now let's stop for a second. That which I just said right there, which we take so casually because it's almost conventional wisdom to understand the process of innovation and the required iterations along the way. It's so casual to just know there's nothing breakthrough I'm highlighting by pointing out here. But phrased another way, it is widely accepted knowledge that on the way to something new, there will be versions or steps that will fail to meet the mark. And those versions may range from downright catastrophic failures to hopefully improving in the quality of failing over time. And this very understanding, which we can say with our forebrain out loud in a way to describe how things come to be so casually, is something that our very emotions do not have and have not done the same job of accepting and understanding. Despite our brain's understanding that this is what it takes, we still fail on every level to innovate in all the crucial ways that would make for an outstanding or extraordinary life. Because emotionally, played out in real life and all the real circumstances, these iterations or steps of failure along the way that I casually mentioned that we acknowledge are actual days and months of emotional turmoil and confusion and downright torture on the way to creating something that we desire, that we see in our minds. Especially if that creation isn't something as obvious as a project or a technical tool or a light bulb or an experiment in a lab. Especially if this creation is something so uncertain like the creating of our own unique pathway in life. Because even that is the greatest and the most important innovation of all. How to be the most utmost, unique, fully manifested versions of us. Defined and create that unique pathway in life to bring that out. To be the maximized genetic potential versions of us in every facet. The maximized genetic potential. That is to have used the God-given muscle fibers in every ounce of your being to have been put under isolated and compound recruited exercises to have developed to what is most possible for what you have been given by nature. And sadly, many of us leave so many parts of us loose and flabby because we fail to train each of these muscles to failure. Training to failure. Or how much you have left in reserve until failure is a fundamental measuring stick of how much and how fast you develop in anything in life. How much you have left. How much you train to failure. Meaning our growth is essentially a dance around failure. Leaving too much in the tank, too many times for too long in your life, and you will be underdeveloped. It's just physics. So in taking an honest look at my own life in the application of this understanding or wisdom, I can't point with much pride to really any arena in life in which I have truly innovated. And because I started asking and thinking about why, I landed at the idea and the reality check that it has to do with this relationship with fear of failure. And how there's a gap between what I said, which is this casual understanding of something that we conventionally know, and integrating it into, I don't know, some part of me that allows my emotions to accept the nature and makeup of failure, the fact that iterations are a part of it. So, of course, I started thinking about my relationship with failure, which is how all these messages started appearing, these podcasts and these things that I've been listening to. And again, I'm not saying anything that is novel. I think in any successful interview with any successful person, I've heard the story revolve around bravery and the courage to act in spite of fear and the downright need to fail fast and often, and how that is the steps, the inevitable steps to success on the other side of failing enough. So if I and you have heard it so many times, why doesn't it stick enough with our emotions to have resolve enough for it to be fundamental in shaping our lives, so we have different lives than the ones that we're living? Why do we still choose safe lives and crevices? Little pockets of comfort to find ourselves in. Why do we go down a path that leads us to less survivability over time in the face of this rapid change where innovation and involved failure in innovating is the prerequisite? Even the safe lives and crevices then offer just as much danger and risk as the actual risk of exploration, because of how fast change is coming. Where you are isn't as safe as you think it is. I think the first problem is that we are intellectually told these things, but in our education and in our encouragement, we are waned and warned against and away from failure and away from exploration. Despite the heroic journey being foundationally celebrated in all religions and myths and stories, and despite knowing this in the core of us, without it even having to be taught to us, still, because of the imposition of our care and our natural fear, even despite the understanding of the hero's plight for the people we love, we advise them against the adventure. We prescribe the safe paths, the familiar roads, the guarantees, the least susceptible to randomness. And in healthy doses, all this is rightfully so, because we need to learn caution before application of bravery, or it's just naivete, and that is unethical and it's dangerous. A person must be educated first on the dangers of the undertaking, and then, with that complete knowledge, out of desire and despite fear, must venture out into the unknown. So, although I can justify our prescription for our safety for the ones that we love, the problem becomes there remains only few and far between who come out of our initial education of danger, of caution. There's only a few that are left, still holding on to firm and undiminished spirit on the other side that is required for the decade of pilgrimage to serve your becoming. Many of us are scared away internally from the actual tumble and grappling that is needed to meet our destiny. So in this way, we pass on our fears from generations to generations, leaving chance for only a few outliers that come from our lineage that transcend the prescribed bondage. And this has enough power to define the adjectives that become synonymous with your family name and what you are known for centuries. And again, I can justify your failures and mine in this regard because I can understand the need for caution for our loved ones. But I'm here to point out the cost for this caution. Ones that at 34 years old, I still have to battle with daily. Again, we are not taught to explore and expect failure as a positive feedback loop. We are told to chase paths where success is clearly defined and easily replicated. And of course, easy to assess when off course. And as attractive as that may seem, especially at times when confusion and options surmount, especially the kind we're plagued with in our current times where you don't just have to follow what you're told. You can do anything you want, and that in itself is very scary. Despite the confusion and the attractiveness to the guaranteed road, when that guaranteed road becomes attractive, when all the confusion and the options surmount, despite that attractiveness to that guaranteed road, remember, you are giving up the height of the ceilings for the stability of the floor. And for some of us, coming from turbulence, just a solid, unshakable surface is accomplishment enough. But unless you're in this camp, and if you're in most of the Western world without an abusive or overly traumatic upbringing, what I wish for you, would want for you, would have raised you with, if I were in charge of rearing you with my love, the same I'm trying to give to my inner child. And that is a reminder to walk with faith that despite the path, there is inherent safety and bumper guards that will see you through any risk, setback, and failure. Of course, as long as you're reasonable and not walking the line of stupidity. It's definitely much harder to go down a road where success is less clearly defined and less apparent, and mostly self-defined and made self-apparent. And of course, all that freedom and flexibility of not knowing where the lines are can lead to coloring in the danger zones. But to find your stroke in the unique way of your design is something that requires you to suspend all confines at times. Or you'll always create what you've known. You'll always be bounded by what has been made apparent to you by someone else. What has been defined as such by someone else. And parts of you are lost in all the places you don't re-explore all those parameters defined by someone else. At certain points in your life, you have to revisit everything you've been taught and pick back up what of you was left there. So while I justify your failures because you weren't taught better or encouraged to fail more, my eager yearning for the world would be that when you're in the position to earn influence of young minds in your own life, that you can caution with caution, that at the least it's mixed in with messaging around the positives of failing. if I was young, I would want to be told that failing is a good sign. And if it's a solid fail, if it's a good L, then it's the best sign you're on your way to something unknown and unseen by others. It has to be a quality fail. You can't even fully call it a failure because on the way to something new, what you deem a failure might actually be a step on the way. Failing provides clarity and course correction. You don't know if it's a failure, something you wouldn't have or can't anticipate and see exactly without actually going through it. If I was young, I wouldn't want my generation to carry on the infectious plague of perfectionism. I would want to be encouraged to experiment and put innovation to test and to test all my theories above all else. I would want to be encouraged to measure success less by the ultimate result and more by the speed, the deliberacy, the quality, the uninhibited nature of swinging from short fail to short fall, and which eventually and inevitably will land me to clarity. And I know, and I not only would want to be told this, but I would want incentives in my life to be set up to explore and innovate. And I would want the consequences of failures to be minimized in every establishment I'm made to be a part of. Every group, project, assignment needs to be aligned in this way. And guess what? If this sounds like a pipe dream, and judging by the current education system, I would understand your skepticism, which is why we probably need to set up alternate systems to educate our children that are just as engulfing and can nurture this. But again, this, like the debate of my vocation, school being the bulk of where their time is spent, still presents the greatest opportunity. First, that's where they should be provided this incentive and consequence structure. But the second, and probably more influential part of a child's life is where their parents are. So we still have the possibility to set up an environment to innovate and create a world of our own to encourage failure. And I know that sounds insane, encourage failure. But there's no way to fail at watching an iPad all day, which is what most kids are being raised to do. So I'll take being encouraged to fail as an upgrade. So yes, at home, we have a great opportunity as well to provide for me as a young kid a place where I'm encouraged to try new things and be allowed and actually be expected to be bad at those new things at first. And then hopefully, through osmosis and observation of my parent, I also see how through deliberate practice and persistence, I can overcome initial failures and find a path to success that highlights my own unique voice, my own unique sound, my style, my contribution. I could see that. I could learn that by failing myself and also by watching my parent doing that in their own life. And while I will no longer labor how this is possible and probable given the effort you should have signed up for when you decided to be a parent, I will labor the consequence of not doing so. And that is having your child be left behind and be like me and battle until into their 40s to overcome the safety risk they presume life to be instead of the playground it really is. You are meant to do cartwheels through life, not tippy-toe. Everything, mostly everything, is padded. And you can't get as hurt as you think you can. But the consequence, again, of not willing to fail through life is a disconnect from this incentive structure of the world that we know, that we just discussed, of it being ever evolving and changing rapidly. Not failing enough equals no innovation. And those who get paid the most, first, are the technicians. Then they're the highly trained, skilled technicians. Then it's the skillful technicians with soft skills to manage and motivate people. Then it's the technicians who innovate. And then it's the highly skilled technicians who can innovate and inspire and manage innovation from others. And it's really hard to manage innovation because you have to have gotten to a place yourself where you understand the nature of innovation and the freedom to fail that it requires. We need an environment that encourages and nurtures innovation, or human nature of fear and consequences kicks in. And this is what all the companies in the world are working hard to provide, because it affects their collective bottom lines. And I'm telling you, this is exactly the same bottom line you want to be directing and nurturing towards for your child and for your own inner child inside of you. And again, I tell you, I understand the reluctance. Just a few days ago, in a matter of 30 seconds, in a sentence, my mother was able to describe to me the natural course of a life a person is supposed to take and expected to take. Do this, school, work, get married, have kids, live for kids, etc. I get out of breath just thinking about it. Without getting into the details of a conventional life that made me shudder and almost want to vomit, what I can tell you is that I understand the reluctance and hesitation to do what feels foreign outside of what is expected in life. Innovation means to go down a path without certainty for exploration. Most innovation lies in the important and not urgent quadrant. Most of us never get to it because we're just practically stuck in urgent life. Most of us only do things we know will lead to a certain end, or we think what we're doing is wasteful and unmeasurable in its importance, and we just don't get it done. We're raised to seek answers on the outside instead of using our own brain to come up with possible solutions. We look first to well-defined paths to results defined by others. It's why being an employee is easier. But here's the thing, even if you're not the CEO of your profession, you are still the CEO of your life, and it requires similar thinking. You're still in charge of finding your way through your life that brings out the most unique version and contribution of you. And there is no actual defined path out there that you can find to live out your own unique contribution. You can't find that. You have to create it. And it's why most of us don't end up reaching our genetic potentials, because we fail to become aware enough to notice where we are underdeveloped, where we overdevelop and overcompensate, where our weaknesses remain, and where we can leverage our strengths. All of this is such a lifelong, grueling task that we rather become the quickest cookie cutter version of whatever helps us get by. We don't actually know or ever learn how to maximize our potential, our unique potential. And to make matters worse, we stop trying and failing to even figure it out. And innovation that happens on the edge of uncertainty and failure also stops. And then you lower your survivability and become unfit for the rapid changing world. This is why most people fail. Because we want guaranteed success. We want a clear path to follow and execute. We want to be told which way to go, what to avoid, and what's the best way to go about it. The manual on how to be the most of you needs to be developed, instructed, written, and then followed by you. That's how you put yourself together. Love you, family. See you in the next show.